The text came in at 9:47 p.m. I was already in bed reading an old mystery novel for the third time. The screen lit up beside me. 3 lines, no punctuation, no warmth. 30 guests confirmed. Turkey's in the fridge. You can start at 4 a.m. I read it twice. Then a third time, just to be sure I hadn't missed a thank you tucked in between the assumptions. But no, that was it. I sat up, slid my glasses back on, and walked to the kitchen. The overhead light flickered once before settling. On the counter was the shopping list Lila had printed out earlier that afternoon, highlighted, double-spaced, organized by aisle number. She'd dropped it off after picking up the kids from school, saying, "Oh, and I left you a list. Hope that helps." I remember nodding, still holding the pot I'd been washing. She didn't ask if I was free, didn't ask if I wanted to, just assumed I would. Nathan had followed behind her, kissed my cheek absently, and added, "Lila's folks love your cooking. Don't go overboard, though." Then they left. Not even 10 minutes. I opened the fridge. Sure enough, the turkey sat there in its plastic wrap, 24 pounds. Below it, a crate of eggs. 4 tubs of butter, and 2 frozen pie crusts I hadn't bought. I leaned against the door and let the cool air settle against my face. I hadn't agreed to this. No one asked. No one said please. Just last week, Lila told her mother on the phone that I liked staying busy. And Nathan, he once said, I was so good at making holidays feel effortless. I suppose that's what happens when you make things too easy for too long. People start to believe they're owed the effort. I shut the fridge quietly and turned off the kitchen light. My alarm clock was already set for 5:30, but I adjusted it to 3:45, just enough time to have a cup of coffee before starting the prep. When I returned to bed, the phone buzzed again. Another message. This one read, "Don't forget Derek's nut allergy." I didn't reply. I just placed the phone face down and closed the book. The seating chart was taped to the fridge right below a cartoon turkey magnet. I hadn't noticed it the night before, but it must have gone up after I'd gone to bed. Printed names in glossy calligraphy, each assigned a precise spot. Lila's parents were in the center, seated next to her sister and her brother-in-law. Even her cousin, who hadn't visited in 5 years, was listed by full name with window seat scribbled in ink beside it. I scanned the chart slowly, row by row, expecting to find my name somewhere near the middle or at least the side table. Instead, it was in the bottom right corner, written in rushed handwriting that didn't match the rest. Clarice, folding chair buffet end, no plate marker, no real chair, no space really, just a gap next to the coffee pot where the kids usually left their half-finished drinks. I stood there longer than I should have, holding the carton of eggs I'd come for, now sweating in my palm. I placed it gently on the counter, then pulled the magnet aside just enough to loosen the edge of the chart. It didn't tear, but I wished it had. Last year, I'd made 4 pies, 2 turkeys, 3 casseroles, and the cranberry sauce Lila said she didn't like, but scraped clean anyway. I had stood for 12 hours in that kitchen, refilling trays and wiping spills no one noticed they made. By the time everyone sat down, there wasn't a seat left. I'd asked if I could just grab a plate and sit with the kids. Nathan had looked up from his wine and said, "Mom, don't make this about you." So I'd eaten at the counter, facing the sink. Just me, a plate, and the sound of the dishwasher humming behind my back. I hadn't wanted a spotlight, just a chair. Just enough room to feel like I belonged at the table I'd built. I turned away from the chart and opened the cupboard. The pie tins waited stacked in silence. I pulled them out and set them beside the flour, then opened the fridge and reached for the butter. 3 days before Thanksgiving, my sister called from Daytona. Her voice crackled through the line, warm and easy, like always. "Still time to change your mind," she said. "We've got plenty of room, and Tony keeps asking if his Auntie Clarice is bringing those sweet potatoes." I smiled, though I knew she couldn't see it. "I'm staying here this year. Nathan and Lila are hosting." Again, she asked, drawing the word out. I waited. She didn't. You coming because you want to, or because they've convinced you they can't function without you? I said nothing. She continued, gentler now. Are you needed or just used? I gave a soft laugh, the kind that doesn't reach the chest. The kids'll be there. It's tradition. She didn't push further. Just said, you know, we'd love to have you, and promised to save me a plate in case I changed my mind. When we hung up, I sat with the quiet for a long time. I wasn't angry at her. I was just tired. Tired in a way that didn't come from lack of sleep or sore joints. A deeper kind of tired. The kind that comes from always being the one who fills the gaps no one else sees. I opened my photo gallery. Searched Thanksgiving. 10 albums. 10 years. Table settings. Kids with whipped cream on their noses. Lila and her mother holding wine glasses. Nathan carving the turkey. Not once was I in the frame. I'd taken the pictures. I'd set the table. I'd washed the linens. I'd made the pies. But somehow, I never made it into the memory. I scrolled slower, hoping maybe I'd missed some half-blurry photo in the corner, a reflection in a window. Nothing. Not even a shadow. I set the phone down screen, face down, and turned back to the sink. The dough had finished chilling. I unwrapped it gently, rolled it out slow and steady hands, firm from years of knowing just the right pressure. I pressed it into the pie tin, trimmed the edges, and reached for the filling. The house was quiet, except for the sound of the oven fan and the occasional creak of the hardwood floor. I moved carefully, brushing the turkey with melted butter, and time keeping the rhythm slow even. There's a kind of stillness that comes in kitchens after 10 at night, where everything smells of salt and heat and memory. I had just finished the 3rd round of basting when I heard the front door open and close. Lila's voice carried in through the hallway sharper when she was on the phone, as if needing to fill every space. She likes having something to do. She said, her tone light but dismissive. It keeps her feeling useful. The oven beeped softly. I turned the dial down by 10 degrees. She needs this, Lila added, laughing. She'd be lost without it. Nathan's voice came next, easy and amused. She's good at disappearing into the background. They were in the living room. No need to whisper. Not about me. I stood there, still holding the baster, my hand suddenly heavier than it had been a moment before. I stared at the golden skin of the turkey, the smell of rosemary rising, even though my stomach turned. Useful. Background. Disappearing. Words that didn't sting as much as they confirmed something I hadn't wanted to name. I wasn't family here. I was function. And functions don't get seats at the table. They don't get thanks. They get tasks. I blinked twice, wiped my cheek with the corner of my sleeve, and placed the pan back inside the oven. The timer buzzed behind me, but I didn't turn it off right away. I stayed there for another minute, listening, not just to them, but to everything they didn't think I could hear. When their voices finally drifted off, I took a deep breath, turned off the oven light, and walked back to the sink. There were still yams to peel, still carrots to blanch. I picked up the knife and got back to work, slicing in rhythm, even as something small and certain inside me began to crack. I stood at the counter, double-checking the menu Lila had taped to the cabinet door. Every item was listed with brand names next to it. Libby's pumpkin puree, Land O'Lakes butter, King's Hawaiian rolls not store brand. There were even notes about presentation: use white ceramic dishes, slice turkey before guests arrive, and no foil on serving plates. It wasn't a menu. It was a command sheet. Below it, on the same cabinet door, hung a Ziploc bag filled with disposable containers. I took one out and flipped it over. On the lid, written in black marker, Mom and Dad Lila's side. Stuffing. Another one read, Cousin Jen, mashed potatoes. Each container was neatly labeled for leftovers, already assigned before the food was even cooked. None had my name. I opened the rest just to be sure. There were 9 in total, all for Lila's family. None for me. Not even a small one for the pie I was baking by hand. I turned back toward the sink and filled a pot with water. The sound of it echoed in the quiet. It was the same rhythm as last year. And the year before. No one else bringing a dish. No one offering to clean. Not even an empty offer of, "Let me know if I can help." I reached for my purse on the windowsill, thumbed open the banking app. The total balance flashed up $684.21. After the groceries, the supplies and the extras Lila had added last minute, that's what I had left until next month. I hadn't mentioned it to Nathan. Hadn't told him the sales flyer for the canned goods came out of my church bag, or that I skipped the hair appointment I'd been saving for. I just kept boiling, chopping, baking, useful, invisible, efficient. I took out the pie crust and began laying the slices of apple, each one dusted with cinnamon and nutmeg. The house smelled like the holidays. The kind people praise on postcards. The kind that made you believe everything was full of love. But love isn't what filled the containers. And it's not what kept me standing there. The crusts were cooling on the rack when I walked back to my room and pulled the carry-on from under the bed. It still had a faint scuff from the last time I used it 2 years ago when I visited Deb in Santa Fe for her retirement party. That week, we drank coffee on her porch every morning and slept in like teenagers. I placed the suitcase on the bed and opened it slowly. The zipper stuck halfway. I didn't force it. I just waited. My hands moved on their own folded jeans, one warm sweater, my travel-sized toiletries. I left the pearl earrings on the dresser. Didn't feel right bringing them. They belonged to a version of me that still waited for a place at someone else's table. I sat down at the edge of the bed and typed into my phone last-minute flights from Savannah. A few popped up. The cheapest left at 5:25 a.m. Non-stop. 1 seat left. I stared at it for a long minute before tapping confirm. Then I called Deb. She answered on the second ring. "Got a guest room?" I asked. Her voice softened. "Always." I didn't explain. I didn't have to. Back in the kitchen, I grabbed a sticky note from the drawer, the kind Lila uses to label leftovers. I picked up the pen and wrote carefully each word, quiet but certain. "This year, I'm not on the menu." I folded the note in half and slid it under the salt shaker, right where they'd find it once the panic set in. I unplugged the mixer, covered the pies, and set the rolls back in the pantry. I didn't erase anything. I didn't throw anything out. I just left things unfinished, like they always left me. By the time I zipped the suitcase closed, the house was dark again. Silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft click of the oven cooling down. I checked the flight one more time. Still confirmed. Still mine. I set my alarm for 3:30 a.m. and placed the phone face down. There was nothing left to reply to. The house was still asleep when I poured my coffee. I didn't turn on the kitchen light. The glow from the microwave clock was enough. The air was thick with silence. No footsteps, no voices, no demands. Just me and the sound of my own breathing. I drank the coffee slowly. No cream, no sugar. Just the way Henry used to make it. When the mug was empty, I rinsed it, dried it with the towel from the stove, and placed it gently back on its hook. Then I opened the fridge. The turkey was still there, taking up half the bottom shelf. I lifted it out and set it on the counter. I didn't touch the seasoning. I didn't reach for the butter or herbs. I just left it cold, plain, raw. The cranberries stayed in the freezer. The sweet potatoes remained unpeeled. They could figure it out. Or not. I walked down the hall, picked up my bag, and zipped my coat slowly so the sound wouldn't echo. I didn't want to wake anyone, not out of guilt, but because I wanted to leave before they had the chance to rewrite the story. Before Lila could sigh and say I would have helped if she'd asked, or Nathan could frown and mutter, She always takes things too personally. In the front hall, I paused long enough to glance toward the living room. The dining table was already set. All white linens and fake gratitude. A table built on the assumption I would fill every plate while taking none for myself. A cab's headlights lit up the driveway. As I stepped outside, the cold hit my cheeks. Sharp but clean. The cabbie rolled down the window. Clarice. I nodded. At that moment, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I pulled it out. Nathan, don't forget Derek's allergic to walnuts. I stared at the message for a long beat. Then I pressed the side button and powered the phone down. I didn't need to carry the weight of that anymore. I got in the cab, pulled the door shut, and watched the house grow smaller in the rearview mirror. Later that morning, while I sat by the window at gate B6 with a second cup of coffee in hand, my phone stayed off. I didn't need to hear what I already knew was happening. Lila would have woken up around 8. Maybe later. She always said holidays were for sleeping in and letting things happen. Except, things didn't happen. They were made to happen. By me. She'd have padded into the kitchen in her robe and slippers, expecting the scent of roasted turkey and brown sugar yams. Instead, she would have found a cold oven and a 24-pound bird still sealed in plastic. The pies untouched. The cranberries rock solid in the freezer door. And no Clarice. She probably stood there for a moment thinking I was just out for a walk or sleeping in. But the longer she waited, the more she would have realized nothing was coming. No backup. No miracle. That's when she would have called Nathan. And he, still groggy, still clueless, would have tried to call me. Once, then again. 5 times total, maybe more. Each ring unanswered. Each attempt more frantic than the last. By the time the first guest arrived, Lila's aunt with her usual bottle of Chardonnay, the kitchen would still be in disarray. The bird unwashed, the sides undone. No rolls, no coffee. And Lila, with a tear-streaked face and flour on her shirt, finally realizing that delegation only works when someone agrees to be delegated. The stuffing likely burned first. She never did check oven temps. Guests would have started talking quiet at first, then not so quiet. Cousin Jen always had a flair for the dramatic. She probably posted a photo of the kitchen mess to Facebook captioned, "Worst Thanksgiving ever." No food, no plan. Disaster. I imagined Lila reading it, cheeks flushed and realizing that no one was rushing to defend her, because the person they all relied on, the one who made it look seamless, had walked away. Not with anger, not with vengeance, just with clarity. As the boarding announcement crackled overhead, I stood, finished my coffee, and walked calmly toward the gate. The sun broke over the New Mexico hills just as Deb placed a steaming plate of huevos rancheros in front of me. Her kitchen windows caught the light just right, soft, golden clean. I hadn't slept that well in years. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. She'd known me since the dorm room days when all we needed was strong coffee and a shared glance to know what the other was thinking. I took a bite. The salsa was sharp, the eggs perfect. And then, without warning, I laughed. Not a polite smile, not a tired exhale, a real laugh. Loud, unexpected from somewhere that had been locked up too long. Deb looked over, smiling. There she is. I shook my head, still smiling. I forgot what it felt like. To be fed instead of feeding, to just be. My phone sat on the table face down, still powered off. I wasn't ready to let it back in. Not yet. Not while my shoulders still felt light and my stomach full for once, without strings attached. Back home, I imagined Nathan pacing the kitchen. I could almost hear the voicemail as he recorded it. His voice careful, half defensive, half embarrassed. I wish you'd said something, Mom. We didn't know you felt that way, but I had said things. In 100 quiet ways, over 100 exhausted meals. In the way I cleared plates no one thanked me for. In the way I sat beside the sink instead of at the table. In the way I packed up leftovers labeled with everyone's name but mine. They just hadn't listened. I powered on the phone for a moment, just long enough to check for emergencies. Nathan's message was at the top. I didn't play it. I didn't need to. I deleted it with one swipe, set the phone back down, and reached for my coffee. It was still hot. Outside, the sky stretched wider than I remembered, as if it had always been waiting for me to notice it. When I unlocked the door, the house was quiet. No shoes by the door. No crayon marks on the counter. No trace of the chaos that had unfolded the week before. Just stillness. I set my suitcase down in the hallway and glanced around. The folded laundry on the armchair hadn't moved. The framed photo of Nathan as a boy still leaned slightly left on the bookshelf. They hadn't been here. I didn't need a note to know. They'd gone to Lila's parents probably the morning after everything collapsed. Maybe to save face. Maybe to blame me in private, where it wouldn't echo as loud. I didn't call to check. I didn't ask when they'd be back. The silence suited me. I walked into the kitchen, filled the kettle, and waited for the boil. The fridge still held the carton of cream I bought 2 weeks ago. I poured just a splash into my cup, stirred, and carried it to the table. Only one place was set. My plate, my fork, my cup. I laid out the linen napkin I kept hidden in the back of the drawer. The nice one. The one no one thought I deserved to use. Then I lit the candle in the center of the table. Not for guests. Not for celebration. Just because I wanted to. I didn't host again. No one asked me to. There were no texts about Christmas. No follow-ups. No apologies. Just space. The kind that used to feel empty but now felt earned. A card had come in the mail while I was gone. Lila's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a pre-printed "Thinking of You" message and 3 quick words beneath it. Hope you're well. I slipped it into the kitchen drawer with the receipts and warranty papers, then closed it gently. That night, I made roasted carrots and a small chicken. No place settings beyond my own. No one to impress. I played the old jazz station on the radio and let the music fill what was once obligation. And when I sat down to eat, I didn't check if anyone else needed something first. I simply took a bite. The meat was tender. The wine was cold. My seat finally was mine.